We are here today for the Manchester launch. Oh, try again. Hello and welcome. We are here today for the Manchester launch of this book here, The History of the DIY Sound System. Yay! Yay! With us today are some of the key people involved. First of all, the author of this book, Mark Harrison, Harry.
Thank you, Drew.
Also, Babsy Lyon and Simon DK.
Hello.
Through the 90s, DIY sound defined a deep house sound for an era. They blazed a trail through fields and clubs, and they brought together an explosive mix of people from all walks of life. DIY started and had their home in Nottingham in the Midlands, but they went countrywide and worldwide. And this was more than just a club crew. This was a movement. This was about the free party movement. This was one of the most significant moments in the dance culture era. It brought together the urban rave kids who'd found electronic music, who had access to technology, to decks, to the records, with the traveller community who had sound systems and the craft to throw parties and free parties outside the cities, outside any limitations, outside walls. And it also built on traditions from punk, bands such as Crass, and alternative political culture in the UK. These days, of course, everything, in a digital age, everything is captured in real time. Everything we do ends up on the internet, whether we want it or not. It was very different back then. People did not carry cameras in their back pocket. Also, this was an underground movement. It wasn't well understood or represented in the media. And so many stories are lost and never heard. And this story is an important one. This story needs to be heard. This story is central to the history of dance music and electronic music and culture in the UK and internationally. But more than that, this was an era-defining moment that really came out of its political time in the late 80s, but is still a reference point today. So today, we're going to have a conversation, and what we want to do together is, first of all, give you a sense of what those moments were like, really try and convey to you a vivid picture of what it was like back then. And also, we want to pick up on some of the themes that Harry has raised in the book, a lot of which is to do with how this really went beyond simply, as I say, club nights, and really connected at a deep level and brought people together and really brought some profound change along with it. So we're going to have a conversation. If we have time at the end, we'd love to hear questions from you. So if you've got any, think them up and we'll bring a mic to you later on. I'm going to start with Harry. Harry.
Thanks, Drew.
Thank you for writing this. For me, it was an emotional read. Obviously, I was there for some of this, not all. We got to know each other probably after those first years. But many of the things you talk about were very much part of my history. I found it a very emotional journey reading this book. And it's had a great reception. So I guess my first question is, some audience participation over there. Round of applause. Yay!
Who's that boy?
Future generation right there. So it's had a great reception. And why do you think, 30 years later, why do you think people are really responding so well to this book? What is it that was significant about what happened then?
Okay, thanks, Drew, for the intro. I'd just like to start today by saying a big shout out to great Rick, now Grey Sons, who's having an appendix operation today, and I hope she's very well. She would have been here, but she couldn't make it, so we hope you all wish Grace well. So it's a great question. In fact, that is the essence of the book, and I will refer to the book, obviously, during the interview, and there's a bit which says you know, life is not a search for happiness particularly, it's a search for belonging. It's a search for meaning, and I think the reason it is sold amazing, but I'm actually amazed. I'm amazed that I wrote it. It's taken me 20 years, and I started it seriously writing 3 years ago, and then a big break, and then I started last May, and then etc. And I often thought, how am I going to finish this? And I think, I think what drove me on was the fact that it means so much to me. Why does it mean so much to me, and why does it mean so much to many other people? I think it's almost those of us who went through those times, not just free parties, not just DIY, but the whole acid house thing, the whole conversion, whether it was the Hacienda, whether it was Blackburn, whether it was a club in Bath or Stroud or London or Amsterdam, wherever it was, it took on this almost sort of sacred meaning. And it was 30 years ago, and it sold quite well. I'm quite amazed. I approached Colin here, he's in the audience somewhere, thinking, is anyone going to publish this book? Does anyone give a shit? Really? Does anyone care really? And and I wrote it and wrote a few chapters and thought, well, do people? Is this a seller? Am I going to get a publishing contract? And I parked the first 5 chapters and then went back to real life, which is parenting and work, etc. Then sent a sample to Colin, and he just said, yeah, within an hour I got an email saying, yeah, I'll publish your book. I was like, oh, okay, I've got to write the fucker yet, really, to be honest. But pardon my French. But I just thought, well, do people care? And then I wrote it, and I was sitting there day after day writing it and thinking, do people care about this stuff? And when it came out, they really do, and it sold, Colin could probably say, a couple of 2,500, 3,000 copies so far. And I think the reason is that it just meant so much. So I've got people like Mandy in the audience over there, and there was a Hacienda regular, and Joanne. We've got people who are like yourself, who are at the Blackburn parties in 89, 90. We've got people who are at free parties, and I just think whenever that particular combination of free party, substances, house music, wherever it happened for you, it was without sounding whatever. It was like a sacred kind of communion. And I got a guy, we did our first parties ever, it's in the book, a place called Pepperbox Hill in 1990, and I did a lot of research and a lot of interviews, and they were probably the first free parties with travellers and sound systems and DJs, etc. uniting. And a guy got in touch with me 6 months ago, and he's doing it was so vital. There's a place called Pepperbox Hill, which is a National Trust monument outside Salisbury. It was so important to me at the time. Thank you. And available from all leading outlets, especially Velocity. Yeah. But he's done a series of badges, people from Pepperbox 30 years later, and he's sold about 2,000 on Facebook 30 years later. And I guess it's the same with punk, isn't it? It's the same with people who were involved with punk. It was so transformative, and it meant people who are really into music and people who are really into friendship and potentially people who are into drugs and all that sort of things that fit together. I think it had a transformative power. So the whole of acid house, if we take that as meaning everything, if we take that as meaning everything from Ibiza to Blackburn to Hacienda to London to the Ministry of Sound to Free Passes to Castle, if we take it as a whole, I just think it changed, it had a really transformative meaning for many people. And then if you add on the free bit, which is what we did, and what we tried to do was introduce some kind of sort of, not political with a small p, but some kind of sort of purpose and collective purpose into what was becoming by 1989, 90 a kind of sort of commercial venture. We just tried to introduce, and it was free, and as free as a radical thing, go back to the 60s, going back to whenever. And I think it just everyone I can see here tonight, apart from my kids, who are obviously a bit young, but for people who've bought the book, I think it just had, they haven't bought the book because I wrote it. They bought the book because it has a very still, most of us are in our 50s, and it had a really deep emotional connection at the time. And however you want to look at that, sociologically or politically or psychologically, it changed our lives. It changed all of our lives, and here we are in a studio 30 odd years later talking about it.
And I would say, in my opinion, that it's not just the people that were there. I think it's got a relevance to people now. I think the things that happened there were really meaningful, and a lot of the issues that you draw out here are really profound. And I think a lot of people who are getting that book maybe weren't there, but are connecting with it and see a lot of meaning. And that brings me to a question for Simon, because thinking of people who maybe went there, I think it would be good if we can give a sense of what it was like. So, Simon, you were you were DIY's first DJ.
Legend.
and I hesitate to say most renowned. Can you tell us what was it like DJing back then?
Back then, DJing, it was quite mind-blowing to begin with. The first time I ever played records to a crowd was at what became DIY's first kind of the birth of DIY, or first night, which happened to be Harry's birthday on the 23rd of November, 1989. And in a way, I'd always been a kind of DJ anyway, my whole life, because I'd always had a load of records, and after you go to the pub, people come back to your house and you play this record, that record, have you heard this new tune, whatever, but not dance tunes, like punk records and all sorts of, like Butthole Surfer, Sonic Youth, Big Black, whoever, reggae, loads of reggae. We used to go to loads of reggae blues parties that you were familiar with. Mm-hmm. And then we just fell into this first night at this club called the Cool Cat in Nottingham, and this guy I knew, he just said, "You've got a record collection, good record collection. The DJ, he's not very good, so I booked a night. I booked this night, and you can play it." And I was horrified at the thought, but then kind of worked my way up my head around it. I agreed to do it, and as the date got nearer and nearer, I thought, I'll give it a go. And then, I hadn't long met Harry, and it turned out to be Harry's what birthday was it? 23rd birthday on the 23rd, 23, the cosmic number. Yeah. And I went to play. My original idea was to play a lot of punk records, but but in this time, in the few months,
things could have been so different.
Could be. Well, I'll tell you, I did play some. I'll come to it, but like, we turned up on the night, and I actually played with Rick, who's now Grace, he DJ'd before, and it was kind of relief that he was coming along, and he played some hip hop, and I ended up sort of, I was becoming a house convert by this stage, and like, but I was adamant I was going to play some punk records, so I took some punk records along, and I'd never touched a set of decks in my life before. And yeah, it was the most mind-blowing night I've ever had, like every single person in there, and there was a total crazy mix of punks and all sorts, we're just going for it, just loving the music, and I love the music. And then I went at about sort of 11:30 or 12 or whatever. I thought I'd best drop those punk records that I promised to all my punky mates, and I did, and totally cleared the dance floor, and that's when I decided, like, punk and house and dance music don't really mix that well, So that was where I got the first buzz for it. But back in those days, it was like a new music, the dance music that was coming out at the time. It was all kind of fresh. It was all, it was all a new style of music, the acid house, and you labelled it, you called us deep house, and that's kind of what we're known for, but I never really saw us, I just think we're a house dance sound system. We played all kind of, I used to play some techno, I used to play all sorts. If it was groovy, it had soul, I'd play it. And back in those days, especially the free parties, obviously from that night I just explained I got the bug for it, and I came away from that night. I couldn't even mix a record. I didn't know how to mix a record. I was like playing one record. I had to ask the guy, the technician. I said, "How do these things work?" I would as this record finished, I would sort of press start on the next one and put the crossfader across, and you could hear it sort of speeding up slowly. But people didn't care. They just loved the music, and anyway. And then we started playing in outdoor parties, and that was the real thrill, and back in those days you could play, I remember the longest set I ever played was 14 hours, and I had two. Me too. Really, 14 hours, yeah. And I had two milk crates. I used to have milk crates before record boxes, and they're quite big milk crates. And so a lot of records, but by the end of it I was so locked in, and so was everyone else, just totally locked in, that I didn't even have to look through my records. I just knew what the next record I was going to put on, and it was just it was an incredible experience. Unfortunately, times changed. Clubs, everyone gets like an hour and a bit set or whatever, and it's different. But back then it was different, and it was special, very special.
Yeah. I played 14-hour set at the Mutoid Waste company stage at Glastonbury 1990.
Did you?
Yeah.
Did you? 1990?
Yeah. So Barbara.
Oh, hello.
Hello. Again, I want to take people back to that time. Heard about the music. Let's talk about the people. DIY was a meeting of the tribes. And one of the things that the book really tells so well is how it brought together city types, travellers, fashionistas, all sorts. Can you tell us about some of the more surprising and unexpected people that you came across?
Oh. Apart from Man with the Tortoise and Man with the Eyes, I don't think it's individually surprising people. It's combinations of, it's surprising combinations of people, isn't it?
Yeah.
Back then, because it was. We were just in our musical silos, weren't we? And all of us in Bolton, you know, alternatives, spent most of our life running away from people wanting to beat us up. And suddenly these tribes come together, don't they? And like, you're just in absolute safety with all these completely disparate bunch of people. So it's the combinations rather than any particular individuals, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's throwing a party at a, 12th century, somebody invited us to throw a party at a manor house, a 12th century abbey or something. We went in that house and there were pictures of Maggie Thatcher and there were, like, it was just splendid in the house. But of course all the travellers come to that party as well, you know, everybody comes to that party. Is that where you drove the tractor through the... Yeah.
Could have been, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you made me laugh about something earlier. He said, do you not remember when Pez, so where's Pez from? Working class lad from Stoke. Pez played on a traveller's bus. He's never been on a traveller's site in his life, has he? And somebody passed him a chillum. He thought it was a carrot. You know, it's the combinations of people, isn't it? It's not that any one person sticks out as being super amazing. It was always amazing when people's grandmas had walked up from Matlock Bath, wasn't it? And sat at the party and things like that. But it's the combinations in it. It's like, that's what, when I think back, it's thinking about that mix of different people, and that's what just warmed the goggles of mine.
Yeah.
Having them all back at our house.
Less so.
Yeah. So Harry, DIY really like lit a touch paper and things blew up. Why do you think that happened then? Why did it happen when it did? And how did DIY build on that first acid house moment?
Well, I've written a book about that.
Really?
272 pages.
Do tell.
Big question. Why did it happen when it did? Okay, so my theory is this. So every year, from when the whole teenage music drug thing was invented in the 1950s, the first teenagers, every sort of 10 years there was a sort of youth revolution. My guess is the way I felt. My older brother used to play punk records at the age I was about 10. I thought, well, I like this music. I've not got a clue what it is, but you know, the next thing that comes along, I'd like to be involved. So every 10 years, young people would get bored. So if you're 18 and 19, you think, it's like, okay, you know, the older music, the old generation. So you had rock and roll, and you had, you know, acid, and you had acid hippies, 1960, you know, the late 60s, and then we had punk rock, which was probably the most important revolution of them all. And then every sort of 10 years, I think young people get bored, and what it need to have to be moved from being I was about to say pointless, I'll rephrase that. Apart from being a sort of subculture that never really caught on, let's say psychobillies or goths, or sorry if there's any psychobillies or goths around, but it never really caught on, don't know why. But to become huge, you had to have a new music and a new drug and a whole new attitude. So punk took over the world. The whole thing was new. And I think with acid house, which I was going to use because it's a great combination of words and it just sounds great. So in 1987, 88, that whole thing, it was completely new. And for me, it was the boredom of the sort of young people, so a 10-year sort of mini revolution, but essentially because for some reason that you could call fate or just synchronicity, that electronic music arrived. Pre-digital. First acid house records made on cheap drum machines, pre-samplers even, with keyboards and with 303s, acid tracks, Future 1987. And it was just music from outer space. So I think it's in the book that me and Rick, big on music, big on hip-hop, big on indie, big on soul, big on funk, just went to an acid house frenzy night in Rock City in Nottingham in late summer.
There's also music you couldn't help but dance to as well. You know.
Well, yes, indeed. So, it was just so, yeah. So we went to acid house frenzy at Rock City, and if you'd never heard music like it, it was just this. It was a music. I think even, funny enough, Mark from Spiral Tribe, I was talking to you the other day. He just saw him in an interview, and he said, the music literally sounded to my ears. It literally sounded like it was just beamed from a different planet that was 500 or 1,000. It stopped me in my tracks. We'd all love music, and it just, as I said in the book, there's a lot of narratives that that ended in acid houses, warehouse parties. There was just so much like Northern Soul, and acid house just stopped it all. For me, it was a year zero, and that we just started as soon as I heard the first house music tracks, and it's very hard to convey that to someone who's young, who's probably heard it on the radio, and it took over everything. But it was just like the world had just been born afresh. And the most remarkable thing is that, without labouring the point, is that MDMA arrived at the same time, and it was invented in 1917. So it was utter coincidence that this phenomenal new digital synthetic music and this synthetic new substance arrived at the same time. And it was just, there could have been 20 years out of sync. There's no reason that they happened at the same time. So there was a combination of the sort of 10-year revolution, and every 10 years things have to change radically, or young people get bored. And the combination of these two things, which blew it into sort of epoch-making change. So, what was the question again?
You've answered it.
Okay, cheers.
Yeah.
So what you're saying now actually takes me back to something you said earlier, Simon, which is thinking of the music and those first sounds that certainly blew me away when I first heard. But you were saying something that rung true for me, which was in those early days, house music was a really broad church, right? House music meant a lot of things. It meant Chicago house, Detroit techno, but also the danceable end of UK indie, early UK rave, going back to older traditions.
I mean, DJs even played hip hop in early sets, and it was perfectly, it's acceptable. Anyone could do it anyway. It's acceptable, but it was quite common. Graham Park, I remember, used to play hip hop in his, Graham Park's a very early house DJ from Nottingham. And he was one of the trailblazers, really. And he played at the House of Undulator, and he'd play hip-hop. But there came a moment, I remember this moment. I can never forget this moment. I remember I used to shop for my records at a wicked shop there's a couple of good shops in Nottingham, but there's one in particular called Arcade Records. And you used to go down to this dingy basement, and the guy who served you, who just knew everything, he was just like, had an encyclopedic knowledge of anything dance, He was called Jonathan. He looked like he belonged in a heavy metal band, and he would get really excited about, I just got really involved. I loved the music, and he'd get really excited about, what new tune had come in that he'd play you that he thought you'd love. And I remember going in one time, and he goes, "Oh, there's this new awesome record, awesome. It's going to blow everyone away." And I don't know, for those of you who might heard the name Joey Beltram, who was a wicked producer. He's only a young guy and from America, and he came out with this track called Mentasm, and as you can tell from the title, it was kind of nosebleed techno. It was the first techno record I'd ever heard with Hoover noises in it. It was just and it just and he sort of said, and I just looked at it. I thought, no way, and that was it was weird. It was a moment. It was the birth of art. And a week later, there was 100 copies of white labels of that kind of music, and it just birthed this new genre of kind of hardcore whatever, and then that kind of divided again into sort of jungle and breakbeat whatever. and it just all these different subgenres sort of started appearing. But you know, I mean, we were, I guess, you know, like you called us deep house, and if you wanted to put a label to us, I guess that would be the one most apt. But we just, you know, just dance music with soul, you know, and that was the way, that was the music that kind of was the thread through all of our stuff that we ever did.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember that moment very clearly. And DIY were known for deep house, and if I may say so, you did it very well. But yeah, it was the soul and the spirit in the music. It wasn't about the genre. It wasn't about the label or the pigeonhole.
Yeah,
It's finding the soul in the music that mattered. Back to you, Harry. So we talked about the music. The other thing that you spend a lot of time on in the book is the social side, and the way that social barriers really broke down, dissolved, and that it was really about the collective, and that there was something very egalitarian about it. It was, you know, it was a community. We were in there together. I mean, I remember when I first got to know you, I'd become really disillusioned with club music because it had become very commercialized, and I'd drifted away, and I found you guys, I found DIY, and I really connected, and then we were soulmates for another decade, and I got spat out the other end. So talk to us about that. I mean, was it as egalitarian as we remember, and why was that important?
Okay, big question. Yeah, I'd say there's two threads that probably run through the book. One is the collectivism of DIY. Yeah, and the other is egalitarianism, which, you know, means equality. So if we start with collectivism, I think that acid house music, we started, you know, so it started at, let's say it started at Shoom, follow the normal narrative, and let's move on to things like Cream and Gatecrasher and this and Venus, and there was always one person or maybe two people who were making money. And that's how house music, you know, or even in Ibiza, there's people charging 30 quid for ticket, and, you know, even blah, 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 Glastonbury at the sort of, when it had a rave 10, and there was usually one or two very sharp individuals, often from London, Manchester, or London, you know, Liverpool, Manchester, or London, making money. And where we chose, we were a collective, and we were always, as you mentioned earlier on, that myself and Pete particularly, and Simon particularly, came from a punk, anarcho background. We weren't anarcho punks with spiky hair and leather jacket, but we were sort of dropouts, refusenik anarchos, and we just basically, it's in the book. We went to, as Simon said, we were fortunate in having Graham Parks. We went to a very normal club at the Garage, Cool Cat, and then it just wasn't enough for us. This is so powerful that going home at 2 o'clock and it's not enough. And then, you know, basically. We were just mates, and we had this. You know, Crass had their pay no more than 99p or pay no more than 3.99. Crass, it was a collective. This is what we do things. We'd gone hunt saboteuring. We were sort of, and we just basically. I don't think we did it consciously, but looking back, we just basically applied that collective vibe, collective conscience to this radical new music, and we didn't. I don't think we did it. We did it instinctively. We didn't do it sort of abstract, you know, synthetically. And so we were just a bunch of mates playing records. And then when we did club nights, when we got successful, and as I say in the book, there was 2 people at our first club night, and they were both on the guest list. And we, God bless Gaynor and Trev. But in later years, yeah, it's all right for you lot. Your clubs are always full. So yeah, they weren't full by accident. You know, we were a collective, right? And so at our club nights for years after the 4 DJs, you'd have 4 DJs on, you'd have me, and then you'd have the lighting people, you'd have the sound engineers, you'd have the blah, blah, and everyone got 75 quid. And if you had kids, you got a 20 quid nipper bonus.
No.
So we were operating much like a workers' collective, really.
Yeah.
And when we went to festivals, we didn't get people. We had people say, well, "How do you make your money?" We don't make money. We actually lose money. And we not only have to lose money, we have to get arrested, and we have to set off on a Saturday in a crappy old Dodge truck, and we have to be there till Monday, till there's 2 guys and 1 dog with 3 legs dancing, and then we have to pack it up in the rain, drive it home, hire a van, lose money, and they're like looking at you like, why would you do that then? Well, because
we used to work out a ticket price, not for, you know, like how much we could charge, how much we could make, but it was like, you know, like what's the kind of least what's the smallest price?
Yeah,
we can
pay
put
no
on,
more
that-
than,
where
yeah.
we won't all go totally bankrupt. You know.
Yeah.
And we
that's
used
the
to
way.
have the
Yeah,
bucket
yeah.
go around at free parts, and the average donation we worked out was 20p. So thanks everyone. Apart from Morton Lighthouse, which was in Birkenhead, you know, in Liverpool, and the average donation was minus £5 because it all got nicked. But anyway. So we operate as a collective, and I don't think we did that. And I think that was our strength. So, you know, organising something on your own is really difficult. And if you're out to make money, we never tried to not make money. We just didn't make much money. I don't know why.
It's not very good.
But we started the record label sort of in intention in about 93 with the intention, well, we could run a record label as, you know, anarcho-capitalists. And we did release 86, 89 records over time, but guess what? We didn't make any money apart from the.
Yeah, but we
you know.
were a platform for loads of.
No, well,
local artists.
we
Yeah,
didn't care. We didn't give a shit. We were just we were trying to change the world. To be honest, that's what all we wanted to do was change the world, and through the medium of house music and whatever. And I think, you know, going back to your previous question is, did we manage that? Well, I've sold quite a lot of books, and I think people still. Here we are on a radio station, so take your choice. But the other thing about the most probably important thing to me was the breaking down of barriers, and there was a point at which in 1990, certainly I think free parties possibly became a bit of cliched by the mid-90s, and this is what a free party is, and this is what you look like, and this is what the music is, which was exactly what we were into. We went to a DIY free party in 91. It was just bewildering mix of people. There were posh people. There were people from, you know, there were like public school boys. There was travellers over there. There was estate crackers over there. There was students over there. There was ravers. And every single black, white, brown, gay, straight. We used to have a bunch of guys in Nottingham who were sort of two carloads of gay guys who were really into the S&M scene. And they said they used to turn up in their full leather chaps, pouches, caps. This is the only place we get accepted. It's fantastic. Yeah. You know, and as Dylan said, there's that great bit in the book where Pez, who was a working class lad from Stoke, who was into breakbeat, well dressed, we had quite a lot of football hooligans on the team, ex-football hooligans, well, semi-ex-football hooligan. But lots of Forest boys in Nottingham. We had Forest fans. We had, and it was the mix was just astonishing. And it was, it wasn't particularly us. It was just the scene. And once it built up with the twin drivers of house and substances, shall we say, and once the people had been to a free party, they became politicised with a small p, and they thought, fucking hell. And then they got stopped by the police, and these people had never even thought about the police. Why can't I go? We're stopping you. And they started thinking about civil liberties and vegetarianism, and they started thinking about collectivism, which had been beaten out of Britain in the 80s by Margaret Thatcher, and the miners' strike, and collectivism had gone, and everyone, selfishism, individualism replaced collectivism, and so there we are.
Yeah, and
thank you very much.
yeah, I thought it was interesting, Harry. You spoke about DIY being a workers' collective, and Barbara, I'd like to turn to you. So, I mean, certainly the collective side, I can speak to that. It's not just words, because I arrived and I was welcomed in. And it was genuinely inclusive, and that just hit you, and it attracted me, and that attracted a lot of people. I think probably as much as the music. It went hand in hand. But you called it a workers' collective, but actually it was broader than that, right? And Barbara, I'm interested in where the collective began and ended. I mean, I turned up, and then suddenly I had practically moved in with you guys for God knows how long. And, you know, throughout the week, there was a sense of community. And it wasn't just the people who had, you know, a gig that were doing this or that. It seemed to go broader than that. So what did it mean to be part of the collective?
Said if I look at you and laugh, step in for me, but no, I'm all right. What did it mean to be part of the collective? I mean, that's not what you... This is only with hindsight, isn't it? Like what it meant.
But during the week, tell us about what it.
Me and him and Grace and Pete always lived in the same place, didn't we? In different houses, which anybody was welcome to. Like literally anybody was welcome.
Literally anybody, yeah.
No, literally anybody.
What about when we went to San Francisco and you put an open invite? You know, anyone who wants to come along can.
Yeah.
We had a 3-bedroom apartment and we had like 47 people turn up
Yeah.
to stay in a
I put it in
Yeah.
mixed bag, which seems a bit foolish on reflection, but there you go.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Do you know what?
Also in the book.
So when you say that, like all the waifs and strays, domestically in one way, in where we lived at DIY HQ, yeah, anybody's welcome. You'd make dinner for 12 and hello, woman, oh, hello, Dick, and knock, 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 tea time, and you'd share your food between 28 people in the end, haven't you? But when you look, what's it mean to be part of a collective? Do you know what? Looking back now in the sort of way most of us actually live now, let's feel like crying, to be quite honest. It meant you've got people who care about you, who've got your back all around you, and you can go to different places. It meant you can turn up like you can't go out because you're absolutely skint. You don't have to stay in and watch the telly. You're welcome to come because you're part of the collective. So where did it begin and end? There's no line that draws a beginning and an ending to DIY. There's nobody in DIY. There's nobody not in DIY, is there?
Yeah.
Somebody
Amazing.
made a comment that we were cliquey once and we were laughing our heads off, looking at status some of our lot. Like, you can't call that cliquey, can you?
Yeah. Amazing. And again, so true. It just rings so true what you said and clearly does for people here. And that was just phenomenal. It's just so powerful, that sense of community that surrounded DIY. And by the way, some great lines in there. For the next book, you've got to quote Barbara.
The sequel.
The sequel, yeah, we'll get to that later.
I've not finished reading the first book. I just told him earlier. This book, I said I didn't want to know how it ended.
It's all right.
It never ends. Simon, so staying with this theme of the collective, how do you think that played into the music, into the experience, into your experience going out on the road to clubs and festivals? What did that collective side mean to you as a DJ, and what was the difference for you between playing in a club, a building with brick walls, bouncers, security, all that, and playing in a festival, in a free party, in a field? What was that difference to you, and why did that matter?
Well, what was the first part of the question?
So the collective side,
Yeah.
how did that play out
Right,
when
it
you
was-
were playing out?
It was just wherever we went in the country, we would go somewhere new, we'd do a party somewhere new, and you'd meet a few more people that would become another sort of branch in the collective, as you call it. And then that happened internationally as well, and that would include, that'd be people who were into the music, who did the same things themselves with the same kind of music, the same kind of vibe. Not, like, it was all just a positive kind of vibe, and it was just like a weird family that just kind of grew and grew all across the world, and like, you'd be welcome in 101 cities across the world, and there would be people who knew about that.
Yeah.
DIY, inverted commas, or whatever, or their version of DIY, and it was just like a big family, and then DJing. I mean, we did club nights, and our club nights were pretty cool, weren't they? And they were great to DJ at. But DJing outside, you can't beat it. For a start, the sound. If you got a good sound system, and we always believed in good quality sound, so we invested in a good sound, a decent PA, and outside, under the stars, a good sound system, and especially when it gets to that kind of twilight morning hour, and it's just getting light, the sound is just amazing, and it's really logged in, and it's just, I just remember this one party in particular, and it was just, there was 300-400 people all spread out massively, on the dance floor, and the sun was coming up, and there was this one guy, do you remember Sam? Bald head, who's
Don't ask me to remember things.
you'd know him.
Tall Sam.
Yeah, tall Sam. And he was just such a cool guy, a nice guy, and all that. And he was just dancing, and he had his hands up like this, and the sun was just coming up above his head. And I just thought, that's a moment you can't recreate in a nightclub,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's like,
Yeah.
Amazing. So, so that's a really powerful story. But in the book, Harry, you make the point that actually it was a bit of a boys' club. Let's say it. I think Emma was the first female DJ. a lot of the people who were driving it were blokes. A lot of the DJs were blokes. And I mean, Barbara, how did that feel from a woman's perspective?
It didn't feel anything like what you are describing.
Okay.
Go, Babs.
You asked me that. You know very well. It's
Voice from the back. It wasn't like that.
to think.
Tell them how it was, Babs.
To imagine that it was a boys' club is just like looking into the shop window at the shop display or something. But like walk into the shop, and there's all the women. No, sorry, we had Pip and Emma came up as top DJs, obviously.
And they were two of the first female DJs.
Yeah, yeah. But DIY is not only the people who literally played the music, is it? God, people need to paint banners, people need to make flyers, people need to distribute, people need to... Do you know what people need to do? Answer the phone 300 times in one night to tell people the directions to a free party, because I don't think we had an answer machine. Anybody who is associated with DIY knows that scene, above all scenes, is populated by the most powerful, strong, hilarious women
Hey!
Yeah.
that are behind the driving force of some of that. There is
And are
anybody
the
who
driving
knows that
force.
damn
And are
well.
driving force.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's populated with however far out those ripples get. That's the people we've drawn towards us, isn't it?
Yeah.
So no, it's not a boys' club. That's just like, if you want to just read the headlines, might look like a boys' club, but it's not the experience of being in it. No.
Okay.
No, in fact, and we didn't know that. Your norm is your norm, isn't it? Yeah. And then now and again, we would go to places that would, it's not quite the same with these people, with these men, with these people, is it?
Where are the strong women?
There's something a bit different going on here. Back to the safety of our enormous collective. Yeah. Oh, I mean, I am the absolute brains of DIY. You do know that, don't you?
Well, it's not him.
It's true. Damn, you were supposed to tell everyone.
You tell me to tell them.
Okay. Okay. So I want to go back. Barbara, you were talking about the ripples, the waves that went out. And Simon, I'm going to come back to you here. I'd like to talk about that side, which you touched on. So we talked about community and collective. The other side is the kind of network, the way this thing ripples out. And this was before the internet, right? Before we were all digitally connected. But it was connected. It was connected through networks of independent labels, of clubs, of parties. And you talked about spending your life in record shops. Can you tell us about some of those connections? How was it connected, and how international did it go as well?
Yeah, it was, it went really international. I mean, it got to the point where you sort of, the music end of it, people would, I'll give you an instance. There's a big DJ from America called DJ Pierre, who wrote one of the original Acid House tracks. Was it Future Tracks or whatever that was his? And we just released our first single on Warp Records, and we were thinking we need someone to, because we were pretty amateurish in our production values, and it was all right single. It was great. It was good, but we needed some different touch, and so the network was DJ Pierre accidentally ran up our studio one day, and I happened to answer the phone. I said, would you mind remixing our new record? And he was like, yeah, sure, for about $1,000. Yeah, sure. And and he did, and he came over and he did it. But that was what it was like. It was like that was how,
He said yes, and this again sound the time. So probably now you'd probably want $10,000 for a remix.
Yeah, exactly.
So I go, he's in London somewhere. So me and our engineer Damien drove down to London. I think it was a Pete Tong or Paul Eckertwell's flat. Went and got him. Like, it's us from Jack. Get in the car. Drove him up to Nottingham. Stuck him in the studio. Did his mix. Gave him 750 quid in cash and said, drove him back and see you later. Just very DIY, really. These days you'd have to sign it. You'd have to ring up manager and sign a contract and get publishing rights and give them 10 grand and blah, blah, blah. But we just drove down to Nottingham, just drove down to London, just grabbed him, really.
Yeah.
And that
Them
whole,
were days.
that whole thing kind of, you know, spread over the world, like, you know, different people remixing each other's records.
And what were the connections through? What were they mainly through? Was it through labels? Was it through clubs? What?
It was kind of the love of music and, I guess, the parties and just the vibe, music.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
And yeah, I guess that was the
Yeah.
connection, really.
Cool.
You know, on that level that
Yeah.
you're talking about.
Cool. So staying with the theme of digital culture, I've long had this kind of theory that dance music was the last analog subcultural revolution, and since then we've not really had another one quite like it. And the reason for that is that in a digital age, all music from every era is available at our fingertips at all times. Whereas back in an analog age, we might have different kind of revolutions. I was talking to my friend Julian about changes between, you know, like in digital culture itself, you know, when networking, when Wi-Fi, when free networks come up. There's other kinds of revolutions, but in music, less so. And in that analog time, even though a lot of the music was developed using digital technology, cheap, newly available technology, it seemed like this kind of analyst switch, you know, from 0 to 1. It was a change in, you know, in world. Everything changed in that moment. And you kind of shoot my theory down in a way, because a lot of the book is talking about how DIY stood on the shoulders of giants. It built on what bands like Crass were doing, you know, and you know, a lot of the book talks about that history. So Harry, what was new for you in that moment, in dance culture, in electronic music? What changed? What was new? Yeah, in the change, in that subcultural revolution.
What was without doubt the newest thing was the music. So I think you know, we were sort of slightly too young for punk. So that kind of idea of before punk. So in '75, to make an album, you had to spend 500 grand and had to have a Fairlight synthesizer and a year in the studio. And punk just blew all that apart. I think punk was probably more influential than the house revolution in its way. I think if it had been for punk, then you wouldn't have had people putting out 500 copies of a white label 10 years later. But what changed? I think what said it before, what fundamentally changed was the music. It was just we were that, as you say, that was between 1985 and 1995, whatever, the world moved from an analog world to a digital world. And I know in the book it says Pete used to call me, and used to call you my internet friend, because we met on some first Infosys site, and it makes me laugh. Your internet friends on the phone, and you say that to someone who's 18 now, they just go, right, okay. But I think digital. I think, you know, famously Chairman Mao, someone asked him about what do you think the effects of the French Revolution were in 1954, and he said, it's too soon to tell. But the internet, without doubt, digitization has changed everything, and I think we were the last gasp. We were riding that crest of digitization. So now all music is available at all times, anywhere, and I think my nephew Rob is in the audience somewhere. There he is. So on his 18th birthday, I thought, what can I give him? His 18's a big old thing. I've known him since he was born. I thought, I'll give him a hard drive with 110 gigabytes of music that I've collected over the last 10 years, 20 years, 30. And so I bought a hard drive and put all the music on it and gave it to him. He just said, I'll just do Spotify. And if you want an example of the generational gap there, and it's very hard not to sound like an old fart, really, because the days of going back and looking at an album in the record shop and it's by The Clash, or it's by Joy Division, or it's by The Cure, or it's by Radiohead, or it's by blah, 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 and looking at the sleeve notes and looking at it and taking it home. But that's just that's ancient history. And I think we were kind of lucky. In some ways we weren't lucky. We worked very hard, but in some ways we were in the right place at the right time. We sort of crested that sort of digital crossover. And I think you're right. The last gasp, and again, Rob has got some cousins, and I was chatting to them at a family do a few years ago, and well, I guess he was 19 then. He just said, you know what, modern music's just shit. And I said, well, hang on, that's what I'm supposed to say. He said, the last original band, I think, was the Arctic Monkeys. I said, maybe, whatever. He goes, have you ever heard of a band called Joy Division? I went, yeah, kind of, yeah. And it was fascinating because he was saying there's no original. And then the only, I guess, the genuinely original British music you've had in the last, without sounding like an old fart, which I am, the last 10 years is grime. Perhaps you had drum and bass and jungle, and that's, which is the first original sort of music that hadn't been. So everything from, from soul, funk, reggae, hip hop, house, well, maybe not reggae, but house music, they're all invented in America. And so I guess drum and bass was the first sort of indigenous British music, and, like it or loathe it in the early 90s. And then grime is the sort of modern thing. But, in terms of that generational shift that gets people to the barricades, I would say it hasn't happened. The music is what it is incredibly fragmented.
Yeah.
So you've got your Spotify playlist, and you don't have to buy a record, and you just listen to track 2 and track 4. And I don't know. It's like, well, when are young people going to rise up and smash the state? I don't know, really.
Yeah. Come on.
So, before we move to final set of questions and closing out, I'm going to ask everyone here if you've got any sort of defining memories you'd like to share, any kind of key memories of that time that you'd like to share.
Yeah, I guess. Well, there's quite a few, to be honest, but.
You can remember then.
You should write a book, Simon.
Yeah, I can remember a fair few. I've probably forgotten a lot as well. But, a memory that was pretty special moment, I think, was it was after we'd gone to Glastonbury in 1990. We just hired a van, a load of us. It was about 13, 14 of us in this van, Luton van. We took a set of decks. We managed to get into Glastonbury free. Don't know how, but we did. It was before the days of the mad fence around it. And then we went into the traveller's tent. And we met this amazing guy called Chili Phil. He used to look after the Hawkwind pyramid stage. And he was like, does anyone want to do anything? The Hawkwind aren't turning up till tomorrow, so if anyone wants to do anything in this tent, and we were like, well, we wouldn't mind, And then just so happened this other guy turned up, and I've got a sound system. Does anyone have a use for my sound system? And it just all fell into place incredibly. And then we had this amazing night. I was still in the infancy of my DJing, and during the night, the Happy Mondays had been playing on the main stage. And then at about 4 in the morning, looked up, and there was Bez and Sean Ryder sort of losing it on the dance floor. And then the KLF come up to us, and we really like what you're doing. And we've got this tape of our new single. Have you got a tape deck there? I'm going to get a torch out. Yeah, there's a tape deck. Can you? We've never heard it sort of played out live. Would you play it? And we kind of figured out how to do it. Put it on. It came on about sort of third away into the tune, but it was What Time Is Love that later got to number 1. And that was the moment. But then the real cap of the moment was the next day after we'd had our night of fun and work and all that. And funny enough, the next night, Phil, the guy who gave us the tent, felt obliged to give it to some punks who spent all night singing "We Hate Acid House," and but anyway, there was this other sound system in the Traveller's Field, and it was run by a sound system called Tonka from Brighton, and really, amazing lot. They preceded us really in many ways, and and they were playing just like amazing tunes and all that, and me and Pete, who many of you will have known, who's God bless him, no longer with us, but we were just, the next night we'd been up for God knows how long, and we were just looking down at this amazing scene and all these tribes of people that had existed pre that moment, like all these trendy club kids, all these, all sorts, like the punks, the travellers, every single kind of race, ethnicity, whatever, cultural tribe, whatever, and they were all just united under this one kind of sound, and then this mad guy rides into the dance floor on a horse and trap, and then they start playing the KLF Chill Out album with loads of sort of cows mooing, and it was just that moment, and we just looked at each other and we said things are never going to be the same after this, and they went.
Amazing.
For Pete.
Okay, so we're soon be coming to a close. So I'll just say to people out there, if anyone has any burning questions, put your hand up so I can see, because we will be closing out fairly soon. So I'm going to turn to Harry. So Harry,
Yeah. Defining moment.
defining moment. No. Oh, well, have you got one? Okay, go for it. Go.
I've got a few, as
Defining
Simon
moment.
said.
Go for it.
I wrote a book about it. I think for me, there's many defining moments in the book. For me, the greatest part we ever did was New Year's Eve party near Bath on the A46 on a very foggy, freezing cold night. And I think some of the Liverpool lot set on Dillis, who later became a partner, was in a van somewhere, and everyone got lost. But we turned up with the sounds of and it just gelled. So we had this guy called Pike, who just popped up with this marquee, beautiful white marquee. And these guys from Bath, they were called Deep Peace, a guy called John Kazecki, who's also no longer with us, and a guy called Steve and Rob. And then we turned up, I think it's in the book again, we turned up and they had parking marshals in high vis and cookies like, what the fuck's that about? And we'd never seen a free party so well organised. They were parking rows, we just, Jesus, we've never been to, we never managed this. But anyway, so we're putting this setting up, and this guy, it's called Spencer, turned up. He said, "Oh, do you want me to throw a sound system in on top of yours?" Yeah, it's like a sort of 4K JBL, really lovely sound system. Ours is a lovely sound system, and about 2,000 people turned up in the foggy night, and it went on and on all night, New Year's Eve. And one of the beauties was there was a Fantasia rave down the road that was like 40, 50 quid, and loads of people turned up. And they were freezing cold, and they were pissed off, and they said, we paid 50 quid, and there was no heating, and it was just crap, and they turned up, and the atmosphere, and it went on. We were in the farmhouse, literally bribing the farmer not to have a nervous breakdown, and the police were, this was a proper acid house party. The police were on the phone, we're going to close your licence down for your restaurant, and he was in bits. We're going, here's 100 quid, here's 500, here's some money, you can't stop. And there was 2,000 people in the tent. And it was just a perfect acid house party. It went on and on and on. I think there's some photos of it on here, but it went on, and so and then dawn came up, and it was just so misty. But the atmosphere, there's a photo of Barbara actually in the tent on one of these, I think. But the atmosphere, so it went on, and then eventually the farmer just broke. Poor sod. He probably never recovered, to be honest, but there you go. But he just said, that's it. So we went in, Jack was playing, and it was about 11 a.m., and it was just going off. And as I say in the book, we were veterans of Hacienda, veterans of Blackburn. Pete was veterans of. I've been to Mind, Body and Soul in New York, and Space in Ibiza, and blah de blah, and the Ministry of Sound, and the atmosphere in that tent. I've never known anything like it. It's like we were in outer space. It was just phenomenal, and it was free, and there was hundreds of bands. It was just beautiful. And then Jack played "Fight the Power" by Public Enemy. And it just went berserk. I'm getting goosebumps now. And it just went berserk. And he played Fight the Power, and that was the end. And that moment for me was just the most just as incredible, high, and just phenomenal as you could ever have in a public space. Really.
Amazing. Okay, so I don't see any hands up. So unless there's any more defining moments. Oh, right. Okay, could you come up to the front? There's a microphone here.
Is that Katie?
Katie, come up to the front.
Watch out for the mic.
Microphone team, technical team. There's a microphone. Okay, borrow that one.
Just on the back of what you were saying, Harry, about defining moments, I just wanted to know what the defining records are for that era. If you could, I don't know, if you could pick any out of a 14-hour set, but handful maybe?
A couple.
So we can Spotify them.
Well, you know, the Tino Derek May mix.
Yes.
That was a special tune played at Castle Morton.
Say again. So this is
Sway No the Tino Derek May mix.
Yeah.
Which is it's a long tune, but it's an amazing tune. And then what about New World Order by Test Department? You know, there's two pretty contrasting tunes there, but both meant quite a lot at that time. I mean, there's loads really, but those are two that stick out. Robert Owens, I'll be your friend.
Well, they changed, didn't they? So in the early days, in the 89, 90s, there was a lot of Relegated Soundwave, Belfast, Orbital, 808 State, Pacific State, Voodoo Grey, guy called Gerald, and then it sort of moved through, and then it became sort of more of American deep house, isn't it? So Ron Trent and Wild Pitch, DJ Pierre.
Yeah, Mood to Swing, anything by Mood to
Mood to Swing.
Brilliant.
Anyway, you can get a list off Simon later. So
yeah. Okay, so thanks. Oh, one more. Please come up to the front and grab it.
Alvin.
There's a Alvy, come here.
This is Albion Jones, age 8.
This is
I have
Harry
a
Harrison
question
Jr.
for my dad. What did you have for breakfast?
2 slices of brown bread, a poached egg, and an avocado. Great
Amazing.
question, mate.
Son of. Okay, so I've got one last question. Mandy, there's another mic here.
When Mandy said she was going to Majorettes after Quadrant Park, what was she actually doing? Netball.
Go on, man. Simon, give it a mic.
Okay, just no. Okay.
So, my question to any of you: would you actually do it all again?
Yes.
I would, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like even now, in
Well,
the
at this
modern
age,
day, with
already
this
we
digital
are now.
era and everything else, would you?
I think it would be hard to do again now, but yeah, I'd love to do it. I'd love to be able to do it.
I'd
again.
do that again on a 10-year cycle for the rest of my life forever, to be honest.
I think
I
we
just can't. It was just fabulous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would I live in a collective where everyone's got your back and I live in an enormous family,
Yeah.
or would I live on my own in
Yeah.
Manchester in a small house?
Yeah.
Would you
Maybe
do it
in
again?
a big house. I would.
it-
Well, this is how I met this lot.
Yeah.
So in my little circle, I know the Nottingham lot, and then I know the Liverpool lot, and I've got like a new partner, and I was trying to explain to him, and he's never done
Where
drugs.
is he?
He's working. He's working. He's never done drugs ever. So I was trying to explain that it wasn't ever so bad. There's not that bad thing side of it.
It was quite good.
Well, it was different, wasn't it? We used those substances to enhance what we were doing. So when I went to the parties, we all got together as a collective, and we all travelled from Liverpool to wherever, and we all I was always the designated driver because I had a car, so I was always driving it. My dad would say, "Don't drink and drive." I go, "I'm not drinking and driving. It's fine, actually. I will never drink and drive." So we'd always get there, and for me, it was the music that brought us together.
Yeah.
But actually, I don't really remember dancing that much. I wanted to see Barbara. I wanted to have a chat with Andrea. I wanted to see Harry. Yeah, for me, it was just about like chilling out with my mates and having a laugh.
Community.
Yeah.
Yeah, that collective thing, that was
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah.
I would definitely do that again because I missed that.
Fantastic. Thank you for the
Sorry.
brilliant question. Thank you. Yeah, and
Thanks, Mum.
I obviously would do it again. I feel blessed to have done it the first time.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, one quick one, and this will be our last question. Oh no, we need you on a microphone because otherwise people at home won't hear.
How can we continue that sense of community and that sense of belonging now? You know, we can't go back a day, we can't go back in time. So what can we do now to actually continue what we're all, the main thing that we're all talking about with what we brought, what we've experienced back then? How can we, carry that on now? What can we do?
I'm going to repeat the question because I'm not sure that mic was on. So how could we repeat it? Could this happen again? So Harry.
With great difficulty. I entirely take what you're saying. It was, so that it was a sort of unite.
What would it take for it to happen again?
Yeah, no.
Well,
Carry on.
we could go on for a long time, but I think what's happened is Facebook's happened, and that's where the community lies, and that's whether that's a good or a bad thing, no one knows. But the sort of idea of non-digital, non-phone communication, of having to actually go and do something and find it, is long gone. But in terms of political collectivism, I guess it still exists. But in terms of through acid house or through music, it probably doesn't exist anymore. And sort of revolutions have fought through technology. Communions are through technology now, aren't they? The world's a very different place.
It's hard for people
You can't
these days.
you can't recreate a movement.
It's hard for people these days to imagine what it was like without social media.
Yeah.
But even these days within technology, people are building their own networks.
They
So
are.
that's where I think the spirit lives now.
Well, they're having
it's people taking over technology and doing it themselves.
And they're having revolutions, aren't they?
Yeah,
Ukraine
absolutely.
and Romania and Ukraine.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's still in the essence of DIY. Absolutely.
Yes.
The flame lives on.
But the flame does live on, and I think there's a lot of younger sound systems. There's a lot of things. There's a big rave in Dorset, I think, last weekend with 2,000 people and blah blah blah. So that
Okay.
we're old and broken, but
Okay.
it's a step back.
Right. So final question for Harry. So Harry, DIY were the Deep House Icarus. We all know we flew a little bit close to the sun, but we left a trail of a million brilliant colours up there. So,
Just
Harry,
leave it there, mate. That's
Harry,
perfect.
I got two questions. So, could we have grown? Could we have grown old a little bit more gracefully? And also, what's the legacy? What's the legacy of it now?
Could we have grown up more gracefully? Definitely in my
Grown
case.
old a little
yeah.
bit more gracefully.
Yeah, in my case, definitely 100%.
And what's the legacy now?
What is the legacy? Well, I don't know. Well, the legacy is, I guess, is in the book. Again, the legacy that it's hard to talk about your own legacy, but I guess what we did without sort of larging it or trying to be whatever it is, we left a legacy of collectivism and egalitarianism and punkism and love, I suppose. And enough people believed in that. DK back on the decks, yeah. But I think that those are our legacies, and I think, it's 30 years ago, and it's a kind of big. It's go to the last question. It's now become, and this fascinates me. I get an email about once every couple of months from sociology students at Brighton and Hove University. So what was it like? I'm doing a module in party and protest. Can you do a quote? We're on the syllabus, so that's our legacy. We're on the syllabus.
Yeah. No, genuinely, I mean. It's true, and DIY changed things. After DIY, things were different. That coming together of the sound, of the music, of the people, breaking down barriers, changed things for thousands and thousands of people, and it's still making those waves. Yeah. People are writing about DIY because it mattered, because it was important.
Go, Drew.
Yeah. We've heard from some brilliant stories and testimonies here. We've had some great questions here. I'd like all of you to join me in thanking these guys for everything they gave us and everything they continue to give us, and for this brilliant day today. So thanks, guys.